The email landed in my inbox like a perfectly aimed dart right into the bullseye of my chest. Subject line: Rehearsal dinner. Details: Body. Hi, Caroline. Just wanted to let you know the rehearsal dinner on Friday is going to be a small, intimate affair. Groomsmen only, really. We're keeping it very low key. Hope you understand. Sydney. A smiley face. A yellow, saccharine, mocking little circle of pixels. My name is Caroline. I'm 48 years old, and for the past 26 years, my world has revolved around my son, Cade. He's 26 now, getting married this weekend, and his stepmother, Sydney, 42, just uninvited me from his rehearsal dinner. I read it again. Groomsmen only. That was a lie, of course. Rehearsal dinners are for the wedding party, sure, but also immediate family, especially the parents of the groom. I knew Frank, my ex husband, and Cade's father would be there. He's 49 and as spineless as they come when Sydney's involved. I scrolled down to the previous emails looking for any mention of the guest list. Nothing. Just a flurry of updates from Sydney about floral arrangements and menu choices, all carbon copied to me as a courtesy, I suppose, since I was footing half the bill. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed a quick reply, not to Sydney, but to Frank. Frank, just confirming Sydney's email. Is the rehearsal dinner truly groomsmen only? His reply came back within minutes. Yeah, Caroline. Sydney's just trying to keep it simple. You know how she is. Don't make a big deal. Don't make a big deal. That was Frank's mantra for life, especially when it came to anything that might inconvenience him or challenge Sydney. He'd said the same thing 12 years ago when he packed a bag and walked out, leaving me, a 36-year-old single mother, to raise our 14-year-old son alone. Cade. My heart ached most for him. He knew. He had to know. He's 26, not a child. He'd been at the wedding planning meetings. He'd seen the guest list for the dinner, or at least heard them discuss it. And he said nothing. Not a word to me, not a protest to Sydney. That stung more than the exclusion itself. The quiet complicity of my own son. My vision blurred for a moment, not with tears, but with a sudden, hot flush of memory. I saw Cade's face, small and worried, the day Frank left. I saw myself working two jobs, sometimes three, just to keep us in our small house, to afford his school trips, his first car, his college tuition. Every late night, every skipped meal, every worn out pair of shoes was for him. I remembered sitting in the audience at his college graduation, clapping until my hands ached, tears streaming down my face, an empty chair beside me where Frank should have been. It was just me, always just me. And now, this. After all of it, I was being told to understand why I wasn't welcome at a dinner celebrating the son I had built a life for. Brick by painful brick. The instinct to scream, to call Sydney and tear her apart was strong, but I swallowed it down. No, not this time. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. I wouldn't give her the power to make me beg for a place at my own son's table. I had spent too many years being the bigger person, the quiet martyr. That era was officially over. I picked up my phone and called Lucia, my best friend. Lucia, 52, has seen me through every single one of Frank's betrayals and Sydney's calculated slights. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm and steady. Hey, you okay? She asked, already sensing the tremor in my silence. I read her the email, word for word, including the smiley face. I heard her sharp intake of breath. The audacity, she muttered. And Cade? Knew. Said nothing. My voice was flat. Oh, honey, she said, her voice softening. That's a gut punch. A pause. So, what are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted, staring blankly at the wall. Show up anyway. Make a scene? No, Lucia said, her voice firming. Absolutely not. Don't go. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you hurt, or worse, seeing you grovel. Make them come to you. How? You'll figure it out, Caroline. You always do. You're the one who always holds the cards in the end, even when they think they've got you cornered. Her words echoed in my mind after we hung up. You always hold the cards. I closed my laptop, then opened the top drawer of my desk. Inside, neatly organized, were folders. One was labeled Kate's Wedding Payments. I pulled it out, the thick stack of invoices and receipts a testament to my financial commitment. Sydney might be holding court, basking in her perceived victory, but the truth was I still held the purse strings. And those purse strings had a very sharp edge. The folder on my desk, Cade's Wedding, Payments, wasn't just a collection of receipts. It was a ledger of my love. I'd agreed to pay for half the wedding, not because Frank had asked me to, but because I wanted Cade, my only son, to have the wedding he deserved. He was 26, and I wanted him to start his new life with Salah, his fiancée, without the financial strain that had shadowed so much of my own life. Frank, 49, had vaguely promised to cover his portion, but Sydney, 42, had micromanaged every single detail, from the shade of cream napkins to the exact variety of roses. She'd made sure every invoice, every contract came through her, even if my bank account was the one bleeding. Now, that bleeding would stop. My first call was to the florist. Hi, this is Caroline Thornton. I'm calling to cancel the order for the Norton Thornton wedding. The woman on the other end sounded surprised. We have a rather large deposit for that, Mrs. Thornton. I understand, I said, my voice calm, almost serene. Consider it a gift, but no more services are required from my end. The deposit, a significant sum, was indeed gone. It was a sunk cost, a small price for the leverage I was about to wield, but any further payments? Absolutely not. Next, the bakery. I'd paid a $1,500 deposit for a custom 5-tier cake. Yes, this is Caroline Thornton. I'd like to retract the payment for the wedding cake for Cade Thornton and Selah Norton. My portion of the wedding expenses has been reevaluated. There was a moment of stunned silence. But Mrs. Thornton, the cake is almost finished. Then I suppose it's a very expensive mistake, I replied, without a hint of emotion. I'm sure you'll find another client for it. My payment is being stopped. It was a risk, a potential legal tangle, but I knew Sydney wouldn't want to involve lawyers and expose her financial disarray. She valued appearances above all else. The biggest move was with the venue. I'd paid a substantial portion of the rental fee directly. I called their events manager. Good morning, this is Caroline Thornton. Regarding the Norton Thornton wedding, I need to inform you that my financial contribution to the event will be significantly reduced. I'd like to discuss the terms of my initial payment and renegotiate the contract. The manager, Jordan Boyd, 28, sounded flustered. Mrs. Thornton, I'm not sure I understand. All payments were confirmed by Sidney Rodriguez. Yes, well, things have changed, I said, letting a hint of steel enter my voice. I'm stepping back from my previous commitments. You'll need to reconfirm all remaining balances with Ms. Rodriguez and Mr. Thornton. My portion is no longer guaranteed. I hung up, a strange sense of calm settling over me. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about control. About showing them that while they could try to erase me from the guest list, they couldn't erase my financial reality. Within hours, the texts started. Not to me, but to Cade. I knew because he was sitting across from me, his phone buzzing incessantly on the coffee table. He'd shown up at my small house, unannounced, looking drawn and pale. It was 2 days after I'd received Sydney's email and 2 days before the rehearsal dinner. Dad's freaking out, he mumbled without looking up from his phone. Sydney's apparently spiraling. The florist called her. The bakery, now the venue. They're saying half the payments are gone. I took a slow sip of my tea. Are they? He finally looked at me, his blue eyes, so like my own, filled with a mix of confusion and something else. Guilt. Mom, what did you do? I met his gaze, my expression unreadable. I didn't do anything, Cade. I just stepped out of the way. Sydney wanted to handle everything, didn't she? She wanted to be in control. So I let her. His jaw tightened. But the wedding. It's a mess. Dad says we might lose the venue. That's a shame, I said genuinely. I paid a lot of money for that venue. But I suppose if Sydney is in charge, she'll figure it out. I watched him. seeing the wheels turn in his head. He was a good kid, just naive, easily swayed by the louder, more demanding personalities around him. The guilt was palpable on his face, a raw, open wound. He knew I had sacrificed for him. He knew what this wedding meant to me, and he knew he had let me be pushed aside. He didn't say anything else, just stared at his phone, the silence in the room thick with unspoken accusations and regrets. Later that evening, after Cade had left, still looking like a walking storm cloud, I made one more call. I dialed the number for the Gilded Spoon, the upscale restaurant Sydney had chosen for the groomsmen-only rehearsal dinner, the one that, according to Cade's earlier texts, was costing Frank and Sydney a cool $200 for the private room. Good evening, the Gilded Spoon, a polite voice answered. Yes, hello. I'm calling about a reservation for this Friday evening under the name Thornton for a rehearsal dinner. One moment, please. A pause, then, ah, yes, the Thornton party for 15. The deposit has been paid, but the final balance is due tomorrow, Mrs. Rodriguez. Yes, I'm aware, I said, my voice sweet as honey. This is Caroline Thornton. I'm the groom's mother. There's been a slight change in our family's arrangements. We'd like to transfer that reservation into my name, and I'll be settling the final balance personally. The guest count will remain the same for now, but the primary contact will be me. Another pause, a longer one this time. Understood, Mrs. Thornton. I'll make that adjustment. We look forward to seeing you on Friday. I hung up, a small, satisfied smile playing on my lips. Sydney wanted to exclude me? Fine. She could have the exclusion, but she wouldn't have the dinner. Not anymore. The next 24 hours, the day before the rehearsal dinner, were a symphony of chaos, for Sydney at least. For me, it was a quiet satisfaction. My phone remained silent, but the ripple effects of my actions were clearly reaching the other side of the family. I imagined Sydney, 42, scrambling, her carefully constructed wedding vision crumbling around her. The venue, which had been so meticulously chosen, now required full new payment from her, or the contract would be voided. The custom 5-tier cake I'd canceled? She'd have to find a new one, likely a basic, off the shelf design at the last minute. And the florist, booked solid for the weekend, wouldn't be able to accommodate her sudden, desperate plea for a new order. Every detail she'd obsessed over, every element she'd used to assert her control, was now a source of immense stress and unexpected cost. I kept to my usual routine, a quiet defiance in itself. I went to my yoga class, had coffee with Lucia, and even spent a few hours volunteering at the local animal shelter. Life, my life, continued, unperturbed by the drama I had set in motion. That afternoon, I found myself at a coffee shop enjoying a quiet moment when I overheard a conversation at the table next to me. Two women, dressed in what looked like event planning attire, were deep in hushed, gossipy tones. Can you believe it? One whispered. Sydney Rodriguez is spiraling. Her vision for the Thornton Norton wedding is crashing and burning. Apparently, the groom's mother pulled all her funding at the last minute. The other woman, who I recognized as Jordan Boyd, 28, the wedding planner, sighed dramatically. Tell me about it. She's been calling me every hour, demanding I fix things. As if I can conjure a new custom cake and a full floral arrangement out of thin air 2 days before the wedding. And the venue is threatening to cancel if she doesn't pay the remaining balance by noon tomorrow. She's blaming everyone but herself. I took a slow sip of my latte, a small, private smile playing on my lips. My stepping out of the way was having the desired effect. Sydney's carefully cultivated image of effortless perfection was cracking. Just then, a man approached my table. Caroline? I looked up. It was Boston Norton, 28, Salah's older brother. He was a kind-faced man, always seemed a little more grounded than the rest of the wedding circus. He worked in finance, I remembered, and had a quiet, observant way about him. Boston? Hello? I said, genuinely surprised. What a coincidence! He smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. Coincidence, maybe. Or maybe I just know where to find the eye of the hurricane. He gestured to the empty chair opposite me. Mind if I join you for a moment? Please, I said, gesturing for him to sit. He sat down, leaning forward slightly. Selah's been a bit stressed. Sydney's been. particularly high strung. I just nodded, letting him lead. I heard a few things. He continued, his voice low, about the payments and the rehearsal dinner. He paused, looking directly at me. You're the eye of the hurricane, aren't you? I simply smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. I took the receipt from my coffee, folded it precisely in half, then in half again. Sometimes, I said softly, the quietest actions have the loudest consequences. He chuckled, a low, appreciative sound. I always thought you were the sensible one in this whole arrangement. Zala thinks so too, even if she's too polite to say it out loud. He stood up. Well, I won't keep you. Just wanted to say hello. And good luck this weekend. He gave me another subtle, knowing look before walking away. His words and Jordan's earlier gossip confirmed it. Sydney was unraveling, and it felt right. Not cruel, but just. My mind drifted back, as it often did, to the years I'd spent raising Cade. I remembered his high school graduation. Frank had promised to come, but at the last minute he'd sent a text. Sorry, tied up with work. I'd sat there, alone in the bleachers, clapping hardest for my son, tears in my eyes, surrounded by families, each with two parents. Or more. My section, where Frank should have been, was empty. My love for Cade never needed booking confirmations, never needed a seat at a VIP table. It was just there, constant, unwavering, and it had been taken for granted for too long. The ring of my phone jolted me back to the present. It was an unknown number. I answered. Caroline Thornton? A harried voice asked. It was Jordan Boyd, the wedding planner. Speaking. Mrs. Thornton, this is Jordan Boyd. I just received a call from the Gilded Spoon. They said They said you changed the reservation for the rehearsal dinner, that you took it. Her voice was a mixture of disbelief and accusation. I closed my eyes for a moment, picturing Sydney's face when she found out. No, Jordan, I said, my voice calm, almost serene. I didn't cancel the dinner venue. I took it. The air in the hotel lobby was thick with anticipation, a nervous energy that vibrated through the plush carpets and polished marble. It was Friday evening, the night of the rehearsal dinner. I was seated in a quiet lounge area, tucked away behind a large potted palm, nursing a glass of sparkling water. From my vantage point, I had a clear view of the restaurant entrance. I was 48, dressed simply but elegantly in a dark blue dress, a stark contrast to the sharp suits and cocktail dresses that would soon parade through the lobby. My heart thumped a steady rhythm, not of anxiety, but of a quiet, determined resolve. Then I saw them. Frank, 49, looking uncomfortable in a stiff suit, his usual passive aggressive demeanor replaced by a strained smile. Sydney, 42, a vision in a shimmering gown, her face a mask of practiced composure, though I could detect a faint tightness around her eyes. Cade, 26, walked beside them, his shoulders hunched slightly, looking like a man caught between two worlds. The groomsmen, a boisterous group of young men, followed close behind, laughing and joking. They approached the restaurant's host stand. Sydney, ever the one in charge, stepped forward, her voice carrying slightly even from my distance. Rodriguez party for the Thornton rehearsal dinner. We have a private room reserved. The restaurant manager, a polite woman in her late 30s, consulted her tablet. Ah, yes, the Thornton party. I'm afraid there's been a change, Mrs. Rodriguez. Sydney's composure faltered. A change? What kind of change? We confirmed this weeks ago. The private room was rebooked this morning, Mrs. Rodriguez, the manager explained, her tone apologetic but firm. Under a different name. The reservation was transferred and settled. Frank stepped forward, his voice rising in alarm. Transferred? What are you talking about? We have a deposit on that room. The deposit was applied to the new reservation, Mr. Thornton, the manager replied, her gaze unwavering. And the final balance was paid in full this morning. We have no other private rooms available tonight. In fact, we're entirely booked. Sydney's face, which had been a picture of elegant control moments before, began to crumple. This is impossible. We have a rehearsal dinner. Where are we supposed to eat? The manager gestured vaguely to the bustling, fully occupied main dining room. I'm afraid all our tables are full, ma'am. There's no availability for a party of your size. I watched, a silent observer, as the reality of the situation dawned on them. No private room, no food, their meticulously planned exclusive dinner gone. Sydney's platinum card, which she'd likely used to pay the initial deposit, had been charged for a room that no longer belonged to them. Beside me, a figure shifted. It was Cade. He was dressed in his suit, the same one he'd arrived in with Frank and Sydney, but he was no longer with them. He was here, in the quiet lounge, sitting beside me. Flashback. It had been that morning. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, I was having my usual cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. It was Cade, 26, looking utterly defeated. His hair was disheveled, his eyes red rimmed. He looked like he hadn't slept. Mom, he choked out, his voice raw. What did you do? Dad's furious. She's just screaming. The venue, the cake, the flowers, everything's gone. And now the Gilded Spoon just called, saying the private room is gone too. They said you paid for it. I looked at him, my heart aching, but my resolve firm. Come in, Cade. He slumped onto my sofa, burying his face in his hands. Why, Mom? Why would you do this? It's my wedding. I sat opposite him, my voice soft but steady. Because you let them push me out, Cade. You let Sydney uninvite me from the most important dinner of your life. You knew she was doing it, and you said nothing. You stood by while I was erased. He flinched, pulling his hands away from his face. His eyes were wide with a mixture of shame and dawning comprehension. I raised you, Cade, I continued, my voice gaining a quiet intensity. Every scraped knee, every late night, every single sacrifice was for you. And when it came to the one dinner where I should have been honored, welcomed, you let them tell me I wasn't good enough to be there. He started to cry, silent tears tracing paths down his cheeks. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't I didn't know what to do. Sydney's just so overwhelming, and Dad just goes along with her. I know, I said, my voice softening slightly. But you're 26, Cade. You're a grown man. You have a choice. Tonight, you have a choice. You can eat with them wherever they end up, trying to salvage their pride and their perfect image. Or you can eat with me. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. Eat with you? Yes, I said, a small sad smile touching my lips. Just us. Like it used to be. Like it should have been. He didn't hesitate. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. With you. I want to eat with you. End flashback. So here he was, sitting beside me, watching his father and stepmother unravel in the restaurant lobby. He had chosen me, and as Sydney's furious, high pitched voice echoed across the lobby, demanding to know what was happening, I knew this was only the beginning. The confrontation exploded in the restaurant lobby, a sudden, jarring cacophony in the otherwise elegant space. Sydney, her face contorted with fury, spun around from the manager, her eyes scanning the lobby as if searching for a culprit. Her gaze landed on me, sitting quietly in the lounge with Cade beside me. You! She shrieked, her voice cutting through the polite murmur of the lobby. You did this, didn't you, Caroline? You sabotaged everything. I remained seated, my expression calm, almost serene. I didn't raise my voice. Sabotage, Sydney? I simply took control of a reservation I had already paid for. You chose to exclude me. I chose to be present. Frank, 49, rushed over, his face flushed. He tried to mediate, but his attempt only made things worse. Caroline, what are you doing? Sydney, calm down. This is ridiculous. We just need to find somewhere else to eat. Don't you dare tell me to calm down, Frank. Sydney spat, turning her venom on him. This is your ex-wife, ruining our son's rehearsal dinner. You let her do this. Frank threw his hands up in exasperation. I let her do it? Sydney, you're the one who wanted to take over everything. You said you were tired of Caroline making everything about her. The words hung in the air, a sudden, raw exposure of the truth. My ex husband, the man who had abandoned us, was now publicly blaming me for being too involved in our son's life. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. I finally spoke, my voice low but clear, cutting through the rising tension. I've never made anything about myself, Frank. Not for 26 years. Not when I worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over Cade's head after you left. Not when I sat alone at his graduations. Not when I paid for half this wedding, even though I was treated like an afterthought. I have never made anything about myself until now. My gaze flickered to Cade, who was watching the scene unfold, his face a mixture of horror and dawning understanding. Just then, Salah, 26, Cade's fiancée, appeared, looking bewildered. She was dressed in a simple, elegant dress, clearly expecting a quiet dinner. She had likely just arrived, unaware of the chaos. Her eyes widened as she took in Sydney's furious face, Frank's agitated movements, and my quiet, unyielding presence. Sydney? Frank? What's going on? She asked, her voice small. Sydney, seeing Selah, tried to regain some semblance of composure, but it was too late. Her mask had slipped. Caroline is trying to ruin everything, Selah. She's canceled all the wedding vendors, and now she's stolen the rehearsal dinner reservation. Selah looked from Sydney to me, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. She was a sweet girl, easily influenced, but she wasn't blind. Sydney's public outburst was clearly alarming her. Before Selah could respond, Boston Norton, 28, her brother, stepped forward from the group of groomsmen, his presence a quiet, steadying force. He had arrived with the rest of the wedding party, but had kept his distance until now. He walked directly to Selah, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. Selah, maybe we should step outside for a moment, he suggested, his voice calm, but his eyes, sharp and intelligent, met mine for a brief, knowing second. He was subtly supporting me, acknowledging the truth of the situation without saying a word. Cade, who had been silent beside me, finally stirred. He looked at Boston, then at Selah, then back at his father and Sydney, who were still bickering. The public display of Sydney's true colors, combined with Frank's pathetic attempt to deflect blame, seemed to be chipping away at his long held assumptions. He quietly leaned closer to me. Mom, he whispered, his voice barely audible. What do we do? The emotional tension in the lobby spiked. Other restaurant patrons were now openly staring. This wasn't a private family spat. It was a public spectacle, orchestrated by Sydney's own lack of control. Sydney, feeling the eyes on her, feeling her perfect image shatter, finally snapped. Her voice, raw with desperation and fury, rose to a shrill pitch. You should be grateful we included you at all, Caroline. You're bad luck. You always have been. You're bad luck. You always have been. Sydney's words, sharp and venomous, hung in the air, echoing the sentiment Frank had always subtly implied. You're too much. Too demanding. Too present. But this time, it was out in the open, a raw, ugly accusation in a public place. I didn't respond. I simply rose from my seat, my movements slow and deliberate. I didn't look at Sydney, or Frank, or even Selah. My gaze was fixed on the elevator doors across the lobby. The shouting continued behind me, a cacophony of Sydney's escalating fury and Frank's increasingly desperate attempts to quiet her. I walked away from the shouting, my head held high, and pressed the call button for the elevator. The doors chimed open almost immediately, a small mercy. I stepped inside, my back to the chaos, and pressed the button for my hotel suite, the one I'd booked for the wedding weekend. Just as the doors began to slide shut, a hand shot out, stopping them. It was Cade. He slipped into the elevator, his chest heaving, his face pale and etched with a mixture of shock and shame. The doors closed, sealing us in a sudden, profound silence. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. It was filled with years of unspoken words, of resentment simmering beneath the surface, of a son's quiet complicity and a mother's enduring pain. We ascended floor by floor, the numbers on the panel ticking upward, each digit a step further away from the public humiliation I had just endured. When the doors opened on my floor, I walked out, unlocked my suite, and stepped inside. Cade followed, closing the door softly behind him. The suite was quiet, tastefully decorated, a stark contrast to the scene we'd just left. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights, my back still to him. I felt the dam inside me begin to crack, not with tears, but with a slow, steady leak of emotion I had held back for decades. Bad luck. I finally said, my voice quiet, almost a whisper, but laced with an undeniable edge. Is that what you think, Cade? Is that what your father and Sydney have convinced you of? He didn't answer immediately. I heard him take a shaky breath. No, Mom. No, I don't think that. I turned then, facing him. My eyes were dry, but my voice, though still quiet, was thick with the weight of what had been unsaid for so long. I'm not bad luck, Cade. I'm just the one who stayed when no one else did. I'm the one who picked up the pieces. I'm the one who worked until my hands ached, who sacrificed every dream, every comfort so that you could have a chance at a better life. I was your constant, your anchor, when your father decided he had better things to do. His eyes, red rimmed and glistening, met mine. He looked utterly broken. And for that, I continued, my voice rising slightly, for always being there, for always putting you first, I get to be told I'm bad luck and excluded from your life. I get to be erased from the narrative of your success, while Sydney, who swooped in with her money and her vision, gets to play the doting stepmother? Mom, please, he choked out, his voice cracking. He took a step towards me, his hands reaching out, then dropping. I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I didn't see it. I was so caught up in everything. I let them. I let them do this to you. And then he broke down. He crumpled not into my arms, but onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. It was the first time I had seen him truly vulnerable, truly remorseful, since he was a little boy. I walked over and sat beside him, putting an arm around his shaking shoulders. He leaned into my touch, his tears wetting my dress. I held him, not as a mother comforting a child, but as a woman acknowledging the pain of a man who was finally seeing the truth. I know you're sorry, Cade, I said softly, my voice still raw with emotion. And I believe you, but an apology doesn't unpull the strings. It doesn't erase years of being taken for granted. The bridge isn't burned, not entirely, but it's fractured, and it's going to take more than tears to fix it. I pulled back slightly, looking at him. I'm done being erased. I'm done being the quiet sacrifice. From now on, I'm present. And if that makes me bad luck to some people, then so be it. He nodded, still sobbing, but a new resolve seemed to be forming in his eyes. The next day, the wedding day, dawned bright and clear. Sydney, I heard, had managed to pull together a basic cake and some last minute flowers, but the grand vision was clearly diminished. At the ceremony, she was seated far from the bridal table, in the third row, a subtle but noticeable distance. Frank was beside her, looking sullen. When the reception began and the time came for the traditional mother son dance, Cade walked directly to me. He took my hand, his grip firm, and led me to the center of the dance floor. As the music started, soft and sentimental, he looked into my eyes. Thank you, Mom, he whispered just loud enough for me to hear. For everything. And then, during his toast, with all eyes on him, he raised his glass. I want to thank everyone for coming, he began, his voice clear and strong. And I especially want to thank the most important person in my life, the one who taught me everything, who sacrificed everything for me, and who has always, always been there, my mother, Caroline. He didn't mention Frank. He didn't mention Sydney. He publicly thanked only one parent, his mother. The wedding reception was a more subdued affair than Sydney, 42, had envisioned, but it was filled with a genuine warmth that her opulent plans might have overshadowed. The floral arrangements were simpler, the cake less grand, but the air hummed with something more meaningful than superficial perfection. From my seat at a table near the front, I watched Sydney. She was trying desperately to save face, flitting between guests, offering strained smiles, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Her usual air of effortless superiority was replaced by a brittle anxiety. Frank, 49, sat slumped at their table, nursing a drink, his sulking palpable even from a distance. He barely looked up, avoiding eye contact with anyone, especially me. Selah, 26, Cade's new wife, approached my table during a lull in the music. She looked genuinely beautiful, her eyes soft, a stark contrast to Sydney's agitated demeanor. Caroline, She began, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry about the dinner and everything else. I let Sydney, I let her sway me. I should have spoken up. I smiled gently. It's all right, Selah. You're a good person, and you're married to a good man. That's what matters. She squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement, before heading back to the bridal table where Cade was waiting. Boston, 28, her brother, caught my eye from across the room and gave me a subtle nod, a quiet approval. He understood. The mother son dance had been a powerful, public re cementing of my bond with Cade, 26. As we swayed to the music, his hand firm in mine, I felt a lifetime of sacrifice, of quiet struggle, finally being acknowledged. It wasn't about revenge anymore, not entirely. It was about being seen. Sydney, unable to bear the public affirmation of my role, of Cade's clear devotion to me, finally snapped. I saw her whisper furiously to Frank, then push back her chair with a screech that cut through the background music. She stormed out of the reception hall, a dramatic exit that few missed. Frank, after a moment of hesitation, followed her, looking like a whipped dog. A small, satisfied sigh escaped my lips. Karma, it seemed, was a patient but meticulous accountant. Later during the dessert course, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lucia, 52. Did you get the confirmation? I knew exactly what she meant. I discreetly opened my banking app. There it was, a notification from the Gilded Spoon, a charge of $200 processed this morning to Sydney Rodriguez's Platinum card. For the private room that she had not used, the one I had taken, non-refundable. I typed a reply to Lucia. Confirmed, won $200. Jammed dinner bill, non-refundable. Lucia's reply came back instantly. Chef's kiss. I smiled. I tipped the waiter well, I murmured to myself, watching the empty chairs at Sydney and Frank's table. Bad karma deserves good service. The reception continued, winding down to its natural conclusion. As guests began to filter out, I overheard a snippet of conversation near the exit. A woman with a small notepad and a professional camera slung over her shoulder was talking to Jordan Boyd, 28, the wedding planner. Absolutely wild, the reporter was saying. The groom's mother pulling all the funding, stealing the rehearsal dinner venue, the stepmother having a public meltdown. This is gold, Jordan. A family wedding column may just go viral. Jordan, looking exhausted, just sighed. Please, just be discreet. The reporter just grinned, a glint in her eye. Discreet? Honey, this is a story, and it's already out there. My heart gave a little jolt. A reporter. A viral story. This wasn't just about my personal vindication anymore. This was about to become public, and Sydney, who lived for her social image, would be absolutely devastated. The thought wasn't cruel. It was simply just. The days following the wedding felt strangely quiet, a silence after the storm. I returned to my small house, the familiar comfort of its walls a welcome embrace after the public drama. The first thing I did was open my laptop. The email from Sydney, the one with the mocking, smiley face, was still there, unread since that initial, gut wrenching moment. I highlighted it, then pressed delete. I didn't need to open it. Its purpose had been served. A few days later, Lucia, 52, came over. She brought a bottle of my favorite Sauvignon Blanc and a knowing smile. We sat on my porch, the late afternoon sun warm on our faces. So, she began, clinking her glass against mine. Heard a few things. The wedding column went viral, Caroline. Sydney's name is all over it, and not in the way she'd like. I chuckled, a genuine, unburdened sound. Karma doesn't need fire, Lucia, just a steady match and dry timber. And you, my friend, she said, raising her glass, are a master of strategic arson. We laughed, the sound light and free. We talked about the wedding, about Cade's toast, about Sydney's furious exit. It wasn't about gloating, not really. It was about the quiet triumph of finally being seen, heard, and not apologizing for it. The satisfaction wasn't in Sydney's humiliation, though I wouldn't deny a certain grim pleasure in that. It was in the truth finally being exposed, in the years of quiet sacrifice finally being acknowledged. A week after the wedding, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Cade, 26, standing on my porch, alone. He looked tired, but there was a new clarity in his eyes, a quiet strength I hadn't seen before. Hey, Mom, he said a little awkwardly. Cade, I replied, stepping aside to let him in. We sat in the living room, the same room where he had broken down just days before. The air was different now, lighter, free of the tension that had suffocated us for so long. Salah and I leave for our honeymoon tomorrow, he said. Italy. For 2 weeks. That's wonderful, Cade. You both deserve it. He nodded, then took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About everything. About Dad. About Sydney. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm going to be distancing myself from them. From Sydney, especially. Her behavior. It was just too much. And Dad? He just enables her. I can't be around that anymore. My heart swelled. This wasn't just an apology, it was a commitment, a true shift in his understanding of his family dynamics. It's not going to be easy, I warned him gently. Sydney won't take that well. I know, he said, his jaw firm, but I have to. For me, for Sella, and for you. He looked at me, his eyes earnest. I want to build a different kind of family, Mom. A real one. One where people are valued, not just tolerated. He paused again, then added, almost shyly, when we get back from the honeymoon, I want to have dinner. Here. Just us, like we used to. A warmth spread through me, a quiet triumph that settled deep in my bones. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, not with Frank and Sydney still in the picture, still capable of causing trouble. But it was a satisfying truth revealed. My son, my only son, had chosen me. He had seen the truth, and he was choosing to build a new path, one where I was central, not an afterthought. I'd like that very much, Cade, I said, a genuine smile gracing my lips. I'd like that very much. The world would continue to turn. Sydney would continue to scheme, Frank to enable, but their power over me, over my son, was broken. Let them invite who they want to the next party. I didn't need an invite to know I belonged. My place was earned, forged in years of quiet strength and unwavering love, and that I realized was worth more than any exclusive dinner reservation.